Some Republican congressmen are criticizing one of Donald Trump's nominees, his pick for the Drug Enforcement Agency. Now, over the weekend, President-elect Donald Trump named Florida's Hillsborough County Sheriff Chad Chronister to run the DEA. Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky, a Republican, vocally disagrees with this pick to head the DEA. Massie said on Sunday on X, "I'm going to call him like I see him. Trump's nominee for head of DEA should be disqualified for ordering the arrest of a pastor who defied COVID lockdowns." Chronister in March 2020 ordered the arrest of Pastor Rodney Howard Brown, saying on X, quote, announcing the arrest of Dr. Ronald Howard Brown, pastor of the River at Tampa Bay Church, who intentionally and repeatedly disregarded state and local public health orders, which put his congregation and our community in danger.
And Representative Chip Roy of Texas said in a statement told to Fox News, quote, "We don't need authoritarians who refuse to use discretion and protect the Constitution, no matter which party is in power." Conservative commentator Liz Wheeler suggested on X, Chad Chronister is a COVID tyrant who arrested a Christian pastor for holding church in person during the pandemic. Chronister held a press conference bragging about the arrest. Chronister abused his power. He's unfit to lead the DEA, and Trump should withdraw his nomination.
Sean Davis, CEO and co-founder of The Federalist, wrote on X, calling Chronister a woke, BLM-excusing, DEI enforcing, immigration law ignoring buffoon. Not too kind words from Sean there. There are thousands of solid sheriffs in this country who are far more qualified to run DEA than this left-wing clown. I don't know if he's a left-wing clown, but he is certainly, I think, COVID tyrant is fair enough. Like Massie and Chip Roy, I agree that those policies were bad. Now, maybe Chronister will say that he was just following orders, and you can take that for what it's worth. But there's something about not only enforcing that policy, but doing like a press release, kind of bragging about having done it, and follow the law. And any of you who defy the COVID stuff, we're coming for you next. That's the wrong attitude, even if he's not responsible for implementing the policy. He's just responsible for carrying it out. But I think respect my authority kind of attitude is not what I want for the Drug Enforcement Agency person.
I think this is an example of the outrage industrial complex in full effect.
Really?
COVID tyrant. I do not feel that way about him. He, one, was following the law and enforcing it. Two,
who else was just following the law?
Joe Biden?
I was going to say, the Nazis.
Oh.
It's a joke. It's,
well,
we'll always say that about, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, but I think he's not an authoritarian for addressing an issue where this local pastor was flaunting COVID regulations at the time. And one thing that's not being talked about much in this story is that those two individuals, Chronister and the pastor in Tampa Bay, they are friends. And even after he was arrested, later he was released, they had dinner together. And so this story, it's almost like a non-story that's being whipped into a frenzy by some of these individuals on the political right. If it was a real issue, I don't know why Trump would appoint him. I'm sure they've done quite a bit of vetting on him to make sure he aligns roughly with the Trump ideology. I think what should be talked about more here is that we do have a real addiction issue in this country. Fentanyl is coming across the border from Mexico as well as from China. Chronister has spoken to that issue and wants to address it. So I think that's the real meat and substance here, not some kind of invented story about being a COVID tyrant.
Well, yeah, we have to address the fentanyl. Certainly, I mean, DEA is an agency I'm not in love with as a libertarian, because I want to decriminalize drugs wherever possible, or at least allow the states to experiment with different drug policies. And he actually, to his credit, I agree with him on this. He was supportive of Florida's effort to decriminalize some level of possession of marijuana. I think that's good. I think I support the rescheduling of marijuana. Right now it's treated at the federal level as just as serious a substance, as dangerous a substance as heroin or anything else, which it just makes absolutely no sense. Letting states experiment with different drug regimes is, I think, a good idea. I hope he would be in favor of that, but it doesn't say, if he's someone who's like, we got to follow exactly what the law says. At the federal level, marijuana is just as illegal as anything else, and so then I would think he would be carrying out raids of dispensaries and that kind of stuff. Now, if he is going to exercise discretion and say, no, we're not going to do that in states where they have a different policy, I think that would be great. But this COVID stuff would worry me that that's not the case. And I don't agree with the policy. I wouldn't have wanted anyone to enforce it in terms of the public spaces and COVID and stuff. And we have to have a little bit of retribution for COVID overreach. And if we're going to collect one scalp of some sheriff who was too aggressive on this stuff, this seems like a good place to stand up and say, you know what? This is a bridge too far. We're not offering forgiveness for this. It was a bad policy. Shouldn't have enforced it. Doesn't get to be DEA head. I would agree with that.
There was COVID overreach, but what Chronister was doing was not overreach, and I think the pastor would agree with that based on the pastor's comments since this situation came about. I'm interested to understand more why people like Thomas Massie and Chip Roy are really kind of amping this issue up, because the truth is, to your point about the issue about marijuana at the federal level, and he would follow the law. One thing you can do from the federal perspective is choose how you're going to enforce, how you're going to prioritize the enforcement of certain laws. So like Eric Holder, for example, under Obama, not wanting to be locking up a bunch of people for marijuana possession, de-emphasized the enforcement of that while during the Obama administration. So that's something that Chronister could do. I think he's probably on your side, and as well as my side, on some of these issues. The main thing I pick up from this Florida story is that honestly he might be maybe a little bit more independent-minded, which I think is always a good thing. My guess is that Chronister might have actually disagreed with some of those COVID lockdowns, but still, as a member of law enforcement,
well, then he should
respect it.
Well, then he should speak up and say so, because many of us have not gotten over the arbitrary and pernicious randomness of what was locked down and what was not. Having people prevented from worshiping in churches, being prevented from visiting sick ones in hospitals, kept out of schools way past, that was the longest thing that remained shut down of all, was schools, the population of people most protected naturally from COVID, given its age escalation. Having things closed, but meanwhile some restaurants opened, people still having to go to work in fields where that was required. We're dealing with that. Casino open, church closed. It was different in every state. That wasn't the case everywhere, but in some places, a hardware store open. This one open, this one closed. DC would relax the mask mandate when Muriel Bowser, the mayor, wanted to have a birthday party, and then would bring it back day after her birthday party. That literally happened. We haven't had enough. Again, I don't mean violent retribution. I mean political retribution for that having been the case. It was insane. It drove many of us insane. It drove me insane personally. I think it drove Chip Roy and Thomas Massie insane as well. And we want vengeance. Yeah, vengeance, my friend.
I don't think vengeance and retribution is a way to bring our country together. Yeah. There is an axe to grind on this issue, but Chronister is not the one to focus on.
All right. Last but not least, what is happening with J.K. Rowling, who is very angry on gender-related issues? We're going to talk about what she has experienced from people fighting with her, calling her out, attacking her, threatening her for just having an opinion, expressing an opinion. Stay tuned. More Rising right after this.